Hello, everybody. Thank you for being on the webinar. We'll get started here in just a couple minutes. Thank you.
And those people would live in a that could physically get millionaires. Yeah.
Good morning, everybody. This is Johnny Pena. I'm a legislative policy analyst with the League of California Cities. Thank you all so much for being on the SB2 Planning Grants webinar. Before we start with opening remarks, I wanted to tell you how to ask a question if you have one. So as of right now, all of the phone lines are on mute. And if you'd like to ask a question, feel free to use the question and answer box on your screen, and we will be answering them along the way. We have some great speakers here with us today, including speakers from the California Department of Housing and Community Development, the Governor's Office of Planning and Research, Ascent Environmental, and the Institute for Local Government. We'd like to begin with a few opening remarks from three folks. First, beginning with the League's Executive Director, Carolyn Coleman. And are you on the line?
I'm on, Johnny. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. This is Carolyn Coleman, Executive Director of the League, and I'm delighted to have you join us for today's important webinar. I'd also like to thank Stephanie Park from Pro Tem Atkins' office, and Ben, the HCD Director, and all the other important guests we have assembled to speak with you on today's webinar. So far, it's been a great partnership, and thank you all for working so closely with cities. Everyone on the call today recognizes and knows firsthand that the state is in a housing crisis. Many of you experienced the effects of this crisis firsthand as Californians in our cities are struggling to find affordable housing in the communities where they work, where they live, and where they raise their families. The League and the cities we represent will continue to be active partners focused on finding meaningful and workable solutions to this crisis, and that's what brings us to this call today, because we all know that everyone deserves a place to call home. In 2017, the League worked closely alongside Senator Atkins and her office to secure the passage of SB2 and to establish an ongoing source of funding to support affordable housing. Seeing SB2 become law was an important step in the right direction as it provides much-needed funding to support the construction of affordable housing in our communities. These new funds will give cities greater capacity to update their land use plans and to zone or rezone to meet their housing needs, and to streamline housing project approval, all important contributions that local governments make to the housing production process. We are grateful for Pro Tem Atkins' leadership on this issue and for carrying SB2 across the finish line in 2017. Cities now have an estimated more than $125 million in the first year in non-competitive grant funding that can be used to address housing needs at the local level. We must take full advantage of this funding and not leave any money on the table in the first year. And let me repeat that. We must take full advantage of this funding and not leave any dollars on the table in this first year. Thank you again to Pro Tem Atkins and her team, to Ben and the HCD team, PlaceWorks, the Governor's Office of Planning and Research, the Institute for Local Government, and all the other partners who have worked so hard to develop the process that you will hear about today that will get these dollars out the door and at work in our communities. I'll now hand it over to Stephanie Park of Senate Pro Tem Tony Atkins' office to deliver a few remarks. Thanks so much.
Hi, all. This is Stephanie Park from Senate Pro Tem Tony Atkins' office, and I just wanted to thank the League, first of all, for arranging this webinar and inviting her to speak. She's unable to participate. She's actually in Japan right now, but she asked that I take part today and say a few words on her behalf. So we were able to pass SB2, the Building Homes and Jobs Act, in 2017, largely due to the strength and diversity of the coalition behind it, which of course included the League and many of its members. To take us all back to the environment we found ourselves in 2017, we had ended redevelopment without coming up with a replacement fund for affordable housing, and we had pretty much exhausted our housing bonds without any guarantee of future funds. The Senator's prior version of the bill, AB 1335, did not even pass the first House despite all the work that had gone into developing the coalition that would eventually champion SB 2. In short, creating a permanent, reliable source of funding for affordable housing had never been more urgent. In its final form, SB 2 reflected many of the most pressing needs that we saw. Specifically, we made the decision to split the first-year funding, with 50% going towards addressing our growing homelessness crisis and 50% going to update community plans to accommodate more housing. And we did this because the Senator saw this as an opportunity to address the homeless-to-housed continuum from both the front and back end. Her perspective is that both are equally important. We must take immediate action to serve our unsheltered homeless residents, but we must also plan for the housing that all our citizens need in order to be successful, engaged members of the community. This is also the goal of the planning money provided by this program, to ensure that local governments have the tools to plan for and properly accommodate this housing and to ultimately permit and approve more units. Cities are, as you well know, the front line of the housing and homelessness crisis. You are the first to see its effects, as well as the ones with the ability to make an immense impact, whether that be through creating a workforce housing opportunity zone, finding ways to streamline local processes, or waive development fees. You are essential partners to the state in solving our housing crisis. And I know I'm preaching to the choir, but I can't encourage you enough to take every advantage of not just the planning funding, but the technical assistance available to you during this process. We understand that there's a wide variety of circumstances at the local level. Some may have staff dedicated exclusively to just this issue who can immediately put it to use, while some may have just one individual responsible for all municipal planning work. The Senator's goal was for all localities to be able to take advantage of this funding and to use it for their particular needs. And finally, I want to thank HCD and OPR for the thoughtful framework they provided through these guidelines, and for all the community partners on today for all the work that they've done, and for all that everyone is doing to provide the education and technical assistance to make sure that this program is successful. And with that, I'd like to hand it off to Ben Metcalf, Executive Director of the Department of Housing and Community Development.
Thank you, Stephanie, to you and the President Pro Tem for her incredible leadership, and certainly thank you, Carolyn, and everybody here from the League of Cities for the great partnership that the Department of Housing and Community Development has enjoyed over the years with you both. Thank you, Carolee and ILG. We got a great team here trying to move forward. We and my team at HCD have been out already meeting with perhaps some of you already on the line. We were up in workshop in Sacramento and Redding last week talking about some of the mechanics of how the SB2 Planning Grant Program will work. Turnout was excellent. Thrilled by that interest. We'll be having another webinar in early May. For those of you who just can't get enough, come on back. And we'll also be working closely with our colleagues in the Governor's Office of Planning and Research and with our consultant team headed up by PlaceWorks to actually be out really in the field, up and down the state, and accessible to all of you to assist in this with the technical assistance piece of the planning money that's coming out. So I know, I've certainly personally heard from a lot of cities how eager they are to get their hands on these funds. And our hope here is that this process will be relatively easy to use. If it's not, you guys need to let us know. But it is correct. These are non-competitive funds. There are allocations being held for every community in California. You have a pretty good long window in which to put together your plans and apply. There's some urgency, but we're going to do our best to make sure that you can do this application process in a way that works for getting through your council and your commissions and to do this in a thoughtful way. The reality is that all of us up and down the state, no matter where we live, no matter who we work for, are facing a tremendous housing crisis. And our estimates at HCD have predicted that just to sort of tread water on the affordability crisis that we're facing, we would need to permit some 160,000 housing units a year, whereas we've only been seeing over the last couple of decades about half of that getting built. Many of these homes as well are not getting located in the communities or in the parts of communities that are close to jobs, schools, and linked in with our transportation infrastructure. What does that mean? Well, today in California, 1.7 million families are low income. They're paying more than half their income in housing costs every month, and they're not getting any kind of assistance today, putting incredible stress on their children, on their retirements, on their ability to handle healthcare-related costs or other unexpected contingencies. Our home ownership rates are at the lowest since World War II, and for those Native Californians are choosing to leave. 130,000 net domestic migration outside of the state. People, particularly communities of color, millennials, lower-income folks, are overwhelmingly looking at the costs that they're facing and making the decision to exit this great state. That's very unfortunate. Our homelessness rates are the highest as well of any state in the nation, and the research is very clear that that growing homelessness crisis is a direct consequence of the inability of folks to make the rent. Too many people living out of cars, too many people on the streets, too many of our students doubling up is really an unacceptable outcome. So we all know this at some level, and I know many of you on the line are with cities and local governments that have been working really hard and getting really creative and stretching to try and come up with solutions. And I know that even the best efforts that are out there, work to update plans or put in place new ordinances are never easy. Often you get a firestorm of opposition when you try and move good, positive change forward, and curveballs come from all kinds of directions. But part of what we're trying to do here at the state is give you the tools, the resources, the information, the best practices to make this journey a little bit easier. So my hope is that with these planning grant programs, you see this as a real opportunity to move forward in significant ways and catalytic ways. It's not often that the state makes available these kinds of flexible funds, and I encourage you to take full advantage of this as a real opportunity to do things differently, not just to backfill on existing projects or dust stuff off that's been on the shelf for a while, but to look at solutions that offer really systemic change and build off of the evidence around what we know actually works to accelerate housing supply. In that vein, we have actually done a lot of consultation leading up to putting out our notice of funding availability, and we're able to come up with a short list of what we've called in our notice priority policy areas. And these are efforts that any city can do where the research and the evidence is the strongest that these measures lead directly to significant increases in housing supplies with a relatively modest and potentially modest amount of effort. So in our mind, these are the first set of things that we encourage all of you to look at for uses of these funds. By no means are you limited to them, but they're a great starting point. What are they? Well, number one, looking for locally designed by right or ministerial streamlining programs, programs that lean in on the local plans that you have in place and allow projects to move forward quicker, cheaper, and without requiring review under the California Environmental Quality Act. Developing objective design and development standards that make it clearer as to the expectations of projects that are moving forward so they can move through the process faster without reinventing the wheel for every project that gets designed. Liberalizing and promoting our accessory dwelling units, updating your local ordinances, looking at your impact fee assessments and identifying areas to rationalize and update those impact fees, make them more transparent so they're clearer and more predictable. And also getting under the hood of how your permit counters and your planning departments are actually processing the paper. Are there ways that you can reduce the turn times from when an application is submitted to when you turn it around with an approval or a denial or comments? These are all things that we know, the evidence shows us, that are directly correlate to being successful with addressing the housing crisis that's in front of us. And furthermore, here's the deal. We have a great consultant team, and in these policy priority domain areas, these are the areas where we're making a commitment to cities to really double down and provide the best model ordinances, the best toolkits, the best peer-to-peer learning opportunities. So we're going to be making sure that we particularly have tools that are strong in those areas. Obviously this is not the be-all, end-all of all the work you need to do, but it is a good way to plug in and support positive efforts. And I also should say that more may well be on the way. This Governor Newsom, in his first week in the office, announced a pretty bold plan to deliver more funds out to local governments to to help them continue to invest in accelerating housing supply, and to make it very clear that these planning actions, increasing the number of entitled units and permitted units, in his mind will lead to more state investment of flexible funds. And that is a request that's pending before the legislature right now, representing some $750 million total, of which a third of that would be available to planning funds. That's part of a bigger $2.25 billion budget augmentation that he's asked for the legislature, and it's part of a goal that he set of trying to build 3.5 million new homes here in California over the next 5 years. So this is an exciting time to be working on housing. It's a really exciting time to be working in state government. It's a really exciting time to be working in local government. So let's get it done and see what kind of progress we can be making. In closing, I just want to thank my team, Paul McDougall, and others who have been working on it on our end. Please give them your full feedback of how we can do better and how we can make this program work as best we can for each of you. I'm thrilled for the partnership, and I'm thrilled for the collaboration. I look forward to seeing the great work that comes out of these efforts. Thank you.
Thank you so much to all the speakers who gave their opening remarks. With that, I think we're going to move on to handing it back over to HCG to begin their portion of the presentation.
Hi, everyone, and thank you, Johnny, and thank you, Ben, and all the other speakers for that introduction. My name is Soha Mahmood. I work with the Department of Housing and Community Development on the SB2 team. I'm going to talk a little bit about the program and introduce you some of the key highlights to that program, and then I'll hand it off to John to go through the application and what to watch out for the application. So like many people said, in 2017, the legislature passed a housing package. That included SB2, which is a permanent source of funding intended to increase affordable housing stock. Of this permanent source of funding, 50% of year one revenues have been allocated to develop a planning grants program which we are here to talk about today. That program is a one-time program that will provide financial and technical assistance to all local governments with the ultimate goal of streamlining housing approvals and accelerating housing production. The planning grants program will provide funding for jurisdictions to update planning documents and land use ordinances and implement process improvements that will streamline and accelerate housing production. For the year 2 and beyond funding, HCG is currently working on the guidelines for 70% that will go back to local government. We'll have more information on this later in the year. Some of the key goals of the program: to accelerate housing production, streamline the approval of housing, facilitate housing affordability, particularly for all income groups, promote development that's consistent with the state planning priorities, ensure geographic equity in the distribution and expenditure of all allocated funds, and support local government through our PA program, which we'll talk a little bit more about later in the presentation. Some key highlights of the program is an over-the-counter process. This means applicants can apply any time during and through November 30th. It's a non-competitive program, and the technical assistance team is working with jurisdictions to help them complete the application as long as you meet the threshold requirements. Again, we emphasize that with this over-the-counter process, we want to work with all applicants to help develop effective applications that will best use funding. We also have grant amounts that are based on population size. So a little bit about the funding. The funding is available for any jurisdiction who is eligible to apply for a minimum of $25,000. If a jurisdiction with a population size of less than 60,000 people will fall into a small category and are eligible to apply for a maximum grant amount of $160,000. If you are a medium-sized jurisdiction, which means a population size between 60,000 people and 200,000 people, you are eligible to apply for a maximum grant amount of $310,000. If you're a jurisdiction that falls into the large category, meaning a population size greater than 200,000 people, you're eligible to apply for the maximum grant amount of $625,000. Some important dates. So we released the NOFA on March 28th of this year. We have workshops and webinars that will be held throughout April. Our next workshop is in SCAD in LA on April 25th. We have the over-the-counter period, and the final due date for the over-the-counter period is going to be November 30th, and the last date to submit application. We will also, for housing element adoption, should be adopted by the date application is submitted, and housing element compliance with state law should be by the time of the award letter. For annual progress report submission, it should happen by the date of the submission of the application. The anticipated end of grant term, the expenditure date, is June 30th, 2022. And our technical assistance program will run concurrently from release of the NOFA March 28th up till the end of the grant term, June 30th, 2022. Now we'll talk a little bit about eligibility, consideration, and our priority policy area. Local governments, cities, and counties are all eligible to apply as long as you meet thresholds. We encourage local governments to partner with local government entities, and this can include regional governments, housing authorities, school districts, community-based organizations. We also encourage multi-jurisdictional partnerships to promote consistency with sustainable community strategy and furthering fair housing and leveraging state and regional funds. For thresholds, to be eligible for funding application, applicants must meet 4 threshold requirements. 1 is housing element compliance. So every jurisdiction must have an adopted housing element at the time the application is submitted, and it must be found in substantial compliance with housing element law by the time of the award letter. For APRs, you must have had an APR submitted to the department for the current or prior year by the time the application is submitted. So the next is to accelerating housing production. If you are not applying for funding on a project that utilizes a priority policy area, as we will continue to speak about, applicants must submit additional documentation and an explanation of the nexus plans or processes that impact accelerating housing production in reference to your proposed activities. So this form is attachment 2 in the application, and you would need to complete it if you are not submitting a project that falls under a priority policy area. And your activity must demonstrate a nexus to housing production and ultimately have a significant positive effect on accelerating production. Lastly, for the state planning priorities, applicants must demonstrate that their locality has been consistent with state planning or other planning priorities. And consistency can be demonstrated through activities that are not necessarily proposed for SPT funding, but were completed within the last 5 years. Applicants will self-certify using attachment 1 that's included in the application. Priority policy areas. So in consultation with stakeholders, we have identified 6 priority policy areas that are considered impactful strategies and mechanisms in accelerating housing production in California that has been backed up by strong research and evidence. Applicants proposing to use one of the priority policy areas are automatically deemed to accelerating housing production without any additional documentation or demonstration that will be needed. However, as stated earlier, those utilizing a priority policy area and other activities that are not considered priority policy areas will need to document the other activities. So if you are using a priority policy area in your application, but you have additional activities that are not priority policy areas, you will need to fill out the nexus to accelerating housing production for those non-priority policy areas activities. The 6 priority policy areas include rezoning to permit by right, objective design and development standards, specific plans or form-based codes coupled with streamlining, ADUs or other low-cost building strategies, expedited processing, and housing-related infrastructure financing and fee reduction strategies. In addition, as part of our TA program that we'll be talking about shortly, the department will be making available best practices, examples, toolkits, and guidance around what can fall under a priority policy area, what a priority policy area can look like in your jurisdiction, and how to implement a priority policy area. As mentioned in the previous slide, applicants who are proposing projects that fall under a priority policy area are automatically deemed to accelerate housing production, and there will be less documentation needed with the application to demonstrate nexus to accelerating housing production. Also, if if you are using a priority policy area, you're going to have a more streamlined application process. However, if you are using a priority policy area in addition to non-priority policy area activities, you will need to demonstrate that nexus to accelerating housing production. Again, that's attachment 2 in the application. There's a wide range of planning activities and documents that are eligible for funding, so long as you can demonstrate that nexus to housing production, and they have the link to accelerating production and streamlined approval. You can find a list of eligible activities in the NOPA. You can also talk to HCD, RTA team, OPR about your proposed activity. Some of the things that are included in this slide and in the NOPA are only several examples of proposed activities that could accelerate housing production. A few examples of these activities include updates to general plans, community plans, local planning related to implementation of sustainable community strategies or local coastal plans, updates to zoning ordinances, environmental analyses that eliminate the need for project-specific review, local process improvements that improve and expedite local planning, pre-approved site plans, regional housing trust funds, and any other activities that demonstrate a nexus to accelerating housing production. Eligible uses for the funds include costs for preparing and adopting the proposed activity, and 5% can be used for admin costs for activities that are directly related to proposed activity. Now I'm going to hand it off to John, who's going to talk a little bit about the application and some key things to look at.
So good afternoon, everybody. The application and forms can be downloaded from the HCD's SB2 Planning Grants webpage. They're underneath the sections as you see them on the slides there. You can pull a copy of the guidelines and get funding to download the applications, all applications and forms that you need in order to apply.
Back one.
There we go. Thank you. The applications are fairly straightforward, and the department designed them to be easy to use and easy to fill out. They are in a PDF fillable format. There are packaging and instructions at the very beginning of the application itself. We have Section A, which is basic applicant information. The Section B is where you just certify the information that you're placing in the application. Section C will ask you to self-certify that you do meet the 4 threshold requirements. We are asking for, in Section D, that all applicants note their proposed activities that they are going to be engaging in. Section E is where we would like you to describe the project. Section F is the project timeline and budget, and Section G is the just basic legislative information. There are attachments in the application itself. Attachment 1 is the planning priorities certification. This is where you'll self-certify that you are meeting or you are consistent with state and other planning priorities. Attachment 2 we've talked about a little bit before. That's a nexus to accelerating housing production. That form will be mainly used by those who are not using the priority policy areas, so that is something that you just need to keep an eye on. Attachment 3 is a sample resolution. That has gone through our legal department, and we do encourage you to use that. Appendices A and B are there for additional information, just in case you need to give us a little bit more than what the application or the project scope area allows for. So when you're looking at packaging the application itself, this is directly out of the packaging requirements. What we'd like to see is an original signed application and either attachment 1. All applicants will provide attachment 1, and attachment 2, once again, that's the nexus, will only be needed if you're not utilizing the priority policy areas. We will need a fully executed resolution, government agency taxpayer ID form, and if this is applicable, if you're partnering with other local entities, we will need a copy of the legally binding partnership agreement in whatever form that will come in. And there will be other documentation as necessary if you are required to prove the nexus to accelerating housing production. That could include letters of support, plans, studies, etc. So that's going to be your basic package sent to the department. A few highlights in a few of these sections. In Section A, this is where we ask for the basic applicant information. But in the very beginning of this is where we ask you to tell us whether or not you're partnering with another local entity. If you are, you will tell us yes or no. If you are, that we're going to call a little bit later for you to really give us a detailed description of their respective responsibilities and deliverables for all partners. We do ask you to note who your partners are in the application. Each and every jurisdiction will be required to send in their own application. So if you are partnering, we need that information along with the legally binding agreement. This is the section C, the threshold requirements. This is question 3 in regards to the priority policy areas. Once again, if you answer yes and you're solely using the PPAs, then you do not need to fill out attachment 2, but we also ask you to tell us which one of the priority policy areas you are using. If no, then you must fill out the attachment and prove the nexus, or the third option there, which really need to keep an eye on, is that if you're using a priority policy area, along with areas that are not considered priority policy areas, you will have to prove the nexus to accelerating housing production and fill out attachment 2, but only for these other areas that are not considered BPAs. Section F, this is the project timeline and budget form that we have provided. Number 1, we need you to fill that out as complete as possible. We really need you to note the responsible party. That's either going to be you, the applicant, or your partner, if you're in a partnership or multi-jurisdictional partnerships. The other category is there just in case there is an other than that. This is an example that we have provided, quickly worked up. This is actually where their jurisdiction is using 2 different priority policy areas, that of objective multifamily design and also ADU ordinance. So as you can see, the Section F, we really are looking for high-level milestones on this that should match up to your description. But this is kind of how we are looking to have this filled out. There's been a lot of questions already about this specific form, so we thought it best to provide at least one example. And as we get further into getting the applications and reviewing them, we'll provide more examples and that for jurisdictions to look at to make the application process just that much easier. This is attachment 1. This is your planning priority certification. This is where you'll self-certify that you are meeting the priorities. And once again, it's very simple. We just need you to pick a date that the action was taken, whatever that action was, in whatever the categories are. Summarize the action taken really quick. If we only require that you prove that you have either met a state planning priority or other planning priorities as noted in the document here. You can fill it out as completely as possible. In fact, we do encourage you to do that, but only one is actually required. We've talked about this. This is the nexus. So I think we're good on this here. This is a copy of the sample resolution that you find in the application itself. We do want you to recognize that and account for that the attesting officer cannot be the person authorized in Section 4 as the authorized signer. So you'll just need to make sure that you adjust the resolution accordingly. And this is not part of the application, but we are reminding everybody that pursuant to Section 604 of the guidelines, each jurisdiction is required to submit a closeout report, which basically summarizes all those aspects you see on the slide there. The department is really interested in hearing how it went, what was the best practice, how did it go, and we'd actually, perhaps when we get enough of these in, also post these as best practices for future reference. So at this time, I think if anybody has seen any questions up there that we would like to take a look at, this would be a good time to answer a few.
We will give you maybe about a minute to write any questions you may have. I know it can sometimes take a moment to type the question in. If you are sending one in, do so through the public Q&A, so we're all able to view the question here in the room.
So one of the questions here is, what does it mean that an applicant utilize PPA? If they are going to use the funds in that area, that's all they need to show, question mark?
Yes. Yes. If you are utilizing a PPA, you just need to fill out the additional documentation about the project, the scope, and the budget. But you do not need to fill out attachment 2, which is the nexus to accelerated housing production, or provide any additional documentation. Do keep in mind, even if you are utilizing a PPA, you still need to fill out attachment 1, which is the state self-certifying with the state planning priority. So another question is, what is the timing of funding dispersed? So we released the NOFA, and we opened up the application period. And so once you submitted the application, we identified about 60 days to get back to you on your application. And we're looking at about another 60 days to actually issue an award. And just keep in mind, this is a reimbursement program. So you would submit your invoices and then be reimbursed for any projects or any deliverables.
There's a question, can we use the funds to initiate an update to the housing element? And the statute provides for a broad range of planning activities from the general plan that includes the housing element, all the way down to even CEQA and improvement permit processes. So the answer is yes. However, we do encourage you to take a look at the priority policy areas, particularly because the housing element should not, will not allow it to use all your resources. Typical costs usually are just $30,000 to $50,000 range. And also in using the housing element, you'll need to demonstrate nexus to housing production. And that's about it. But we really encourage you to couple that with other things and then kind of lean towards some more short-range planning documents. We've seen some ideas around doing site inventory and marketing and rezoning around that, for example, but to really be operating that more priority policy in space.
So for attachment 1, the application only permits a sentence, one-sentence answer, approximately. Are cities allowed to provide supplemental pages to respond to the questions? Yes, they are, and that's kind of why, it's one of the reasons we also put in the appendices in the application, is that if there's more information that you deem is necessary to get your point across and prove your case, then by all means, send that into the department. Can you apply for multiple projects under number 3, which is the priority policy area? Yes.
Yes, we encourage it, and as long as you don't exceed your maximum grant amount, you can apply for multiple projects, both under priority policy areas and non-priority policy.
So there's a question up here that says, how do we give a date for the completion when we only are submitting the application? I think you're probably talking about attachment 1, where we're asking for the date of completion of the activity, and that should have already taken place. And as a matter of fact, you can go back 5 years per the guidelines on that. The schedule. If you're referring to Schedule F, and sorry, because that question was kind of incomplete, then we're asking for an estimated date of completion. There's another question on here that says, do we need to submit any supporting documentation for Section F, budget, such as consultant scope of work? You can, if you want, if you feel it's necessary to make your application complete or more information, by all means. That should have been filled out basically in the project description and scope, but that's kind of an open question. That's a yes and no.
And just to emphasize, we are not looking for a ton of documentation in this application. We're looking for this program to be pretty documentation light. So if we see costs for deliverables, they're probably a little bit outside the ballpark. We're going to know that as a team, and then we'll probably be discussing those things with you, and that's just an open account process.
So then we had another question, is there a fee for the application? No, of course not. There's no fee to submit the application. Again, want to emphasize that we want to make this process as seamless and least burdensome on both the applicants and ATD, so there's no fee to submit the application. Sure. So we have another question that says, could you please review the timing again? I'm assuming that is in reference to the timeline. So we released the NOFA on March 28th, and then we are looking for APRs and housing elements to be submitted by the time of the application, and then we need to find the housing element in substantial compliance with state law by the time of the award letter. The expenditure date for the grant term is June 30th, 2022. And then our TA program, which we'll talk about after the question session, will also run concurrently through June 30th, 2022.
So, Craig Schlatter, pardon me if I mispronounced that. I have two questions. One, on Section F, when we list applicant in the drop-down box, I assume that includes the cost of any consulting costs. And yes, the consultant would actually be considered part of the applicant themselves. And there's a second question there.
There's a question, can consultants be procured specifically for the activity if a jurisdiction have a consultant pre-selected? And the way we've stated in the NOFA is that the local government has to have some sort of procurement or bidding process to avoid conflicts. There's a question whether can the resolution direct the city manager to sign the grant application on behalf of the council? Check with our council, and the answer is yes. However, there needs to be some delegation of authority.
We have a question, may a city submit more than one grant application? We are limiting the applications to one application per city, but remember that if you are proposing multiple projects, you can identify all of that in one application. Can SB2 funding be used to fund a staff position that expedites processing? Yes, funding can be used to fund staff positions directly related to SB2 activities.
So just to add to that, we're not necessarily here to fund staff for a year, but we would be funding a process improvement, which may include, staff to work on that. So we want some sort of deliverable with the ongoing process improvement.
Another question, what is the deadline to utilize SB2 grant money awarded to the city? Again, that will go back to the expenditure date, which is June 30th, 2022.
In regards to the resolution, is this a resolution to submit the application or once the application has been approved? It is both. It is a resolution that you do have the authority to submit the application to the department and accept the award.
We have another question that says, how long does it take to be awarded? Asking this because we're close to housing element certification but don't want to submit an application too early. So right now we are anticipating 60 to 120 days to send out award letters. However, we want to keep in mind two things. One, that the department does not know at this point because of the volume of applications and is tentative on how long it might take us to send out award letters. In addition, this is an over-the-counter process that runs till November 30th, 2019, so you can apply any time during now and November 30th for the funding.
Can you give examples of eligible financing and fee reduction strategies where an amnesty program for ADU legalization would fee waiver qualify? If you're doing an amnesty fee waiver program for ADUs, yes, that would qualify, and that's the kind of stuff we're looking for, to maybe redemonstrate a nexus, to provide fee reductions or referrals. Those are would a local market-driven inclusionary ordinance and state density bonus ordinance be one of the state priority policy areas? The answer to that is no. However, it could be an eligible activity if demonstrating an nexus to accelerating production.
All right, I think for now we're going to move on with the presentation. And if you have a question that has not been answered, feel free to reach out to HGD staff.
Okay, so now we're going to move into our technical assistance portion of the presentation. I want to thank John for providing information about the application, and we'll get into details about our technical assistance program, which I know here at HCD, OPR, PlaceWorks, and ILG we're all very excited for. The 5% of SB2 was put aside for a TA program that's going to be facilitated by HCD in partnership, again, with OPR and our consultants. We have designed a robust TA program that's going to help cities through the beginning, middle, and implementation phases of the planning grant program. Our TA program, again, will run until the end of the grant period, which is in June 2022. Our goal is to help all local governments access the SB2 funds and effectively implement their projects. HCD hopes to have a presence and help all local governments by providing TA on a regional, sub-regional, and sub-regional level. Our TA partners, PlaceWorks and OPR, the Office of Planning and Research, will provide more details about the approach. I will hand it off now to Chelsea from Ascent to talk a little bit more about PlaceWorks and their role in the TA program.
All right, thank you, Sohav. Good afternoon. I'm Chelsea Fain with the consulting firm Ascent. I'm part of the team that's been hired by HCD to provide direct assistance to local jurisdictions as part of this SB2 planning grant program. Our team is led by PlaceWorks. It is made up by many individuals from other firms, including mine, Ascent, as well as Provost and Pritchard, ILG, and PolicyLink. Our focus at the moment is providing direct assistance by helping to identify eligible activities, reviewing ideas and draft applications, working to make sure that jurisdictions are eligible for funding. We're assisting with housing element compliance and annual progress reports. And then, as Sohav mentioned, going forward, we'll be providing ongoing technical assistance to support implementation. And we're working with HCD to also create a toolkit and menu of services to help jurisdictions identify eligible projects that would address the particular needs of each community. The toolkit is going to contain resources on best practices from other jurisdictions, model plans and ordinances, samples of work, and other tools to support implementation. Our program is set up to provide on-the-ground assistance at the local level. So we've broken up the state into 11 regions, and each region has its own liaison for this program. So the liaison is your primary point of contact to provide technical assistance at this point with the SB2 application process. And you can see here the regional liaison assigned to each region, and their contact information is also up on HCD's website on the SB2 webpage. So if you have any questions about eligible activities, the application itself, or if you're interested in other forms of ongoing technical assistance, you can contact your regional liaison. And many of these liaisons are consultants that work across the state, so you can really call up anyone on this list if you're familiar with them to seek assistance, but we do encourage you to reach out to your regional liaison. And OPR is now going to say a few words about their role on the program.
Thank you, Chelsea. So this is Natalie Couple, Land Use Counsel at the Governor's Office of Planning and Research. We are excited to be working with HCD and PlaceWorks and the rest of the TA team on this grant program. OPR will be focused on our areas of expertise, which are planning and CEQA. OPR does serve as the long-range planning and research body for the governor and his cabinet, and also is the comprehensive state planning agency. So OPR updated the general plan guidelines in 2017, and we're currently in the process of doing another update to those guidelines, which should be released shortly. In addition, OPR has already produced a technical advisory on CEQA and housing, which discusses the provisions of CEQA that provide exemptions and streamlining for housing projects in the state. That's available on our website and will also be linked in the SB2 website when that is created. In addition, OPR is in the process of creating at least 3 tools within our area of expertise. This includes a statewide map that jurisdictions and developers can use to see whether a CEQA exemption or streamlining might apply to a parcel based on its location. It also includes an update to our 2001 guidance document on specific plans. And finally, a technical advisory on how to tier a project-level CEQA analysis from a plan-level EIR. If there's any other information that you would like to see from OPR, please don't hesitate to contact us.
Okay, let's see if we have any questions on the technical assistance aspect. There's one question I see. Is the webinar being recorded? And yes, it is, and we will send out the recording to everybody at the end.
There's a question, will the technical assistance be available, and is it free? Yes, and yes. As Chelsea explained, we're really trying to get the TA out there in a way that is very much tailored to local circumstances, and we'll be trying to operate at more of like a, COG or sub-COG in the case of, or county level in the case of bigger COGs. So really, we'll be coming to you.
Another question, can the grant reimburse for costs already spent towards work that is consistent with priority policy areas? For example, our city already started work in March on objective design standards. We did indicate in the NOFA that you can start incurring costs upon the release of the NOFA. At pending approval, we can reimburse for costs that began or projects and costs that were incurred once the NOFA was released.
There's a question about the regional liaison in the South Bay. Is it Chelsea Payne? I'm assuming South Bay of Northern California in the Bay Area. That would be Joanna Jansen.
Another question is, what sort of technical assistance will Payport provide? Chelsea can answer that question.
So at this point, we're focused on technical assistance related really to the application and threshold criteria. So if you have questions about whether or not a project is eligible, if it fits within the policy, priority policy areas, if you have any questions about the application itself, we can help brainstorm, we can help review draft applications, answer questions. If you need assistance with your annual progress report or have questions about housing element compliance, you can also reach out to us and we can assist you with that or connect you with the right folks over at HCD to provide that assistance. And then ongoing, we're working now to structure what our ongoing technical assistance will look like to support implementation.
Another question, can we share this PowerPoint widely? Yes, I think we have to make one change. There's somebody we forgot to add onto one of the slides, but otherwise we can send those. You can share those PowerPoints. Another question. Is it just me, or does the Peninsula and East Bay not have a liaison? I don't see one identified on the liaison map.
The regional liaison for the Bay Area is Joanna Jensen.
Yes.
And her name should be on the map. It might be difficult to see on the slide, but if you go to HCD's website and look for the SB2 webpage, you'll see all of the regional liaisons listed with their contact information. If you're unsure, reach out to any of the liaisons and we'll connect you with the right person and provide you assistance.
Another question, are the regional contacts available to help evaluate merit of grant ideas or review quality or completeness of an application before it's submitted?
Yes, absolutely. We are available at this point to answer any questions you have about the application process. So yes, please reach out to the regional liaison.
As well as HCD.
Okay, that looks like it's all the questions for now. And now we'll move on to ILG.
Great. Thank you so much for having us be a part of this webinar. For those of you who don't know ILG, ILG is the Institute for Local Government, and we're the nonprofit education and training affiliate of the League of California Cities, CSAC, and Special Districts. We're actually in the League building, and we focus on just promoting good government at the local level. And we have 4 program areas that we've been focusing on. Many of you know us through our Leadership and Governance, our AB 1234 training. We also have a Sustainable Communities program, a Public Engagement program, and a Youth and Civics Engagement Education program. We provide a variety of services to local governments, including training and education, technical assistance, capacity building and convening. We help with facilitation in many places. We are focusing on a variety of initiatives this year. Several of them are related to housing, including this initiative, affordable housing. We helped put out the report on homelessness last year, and we'll continue our work on homelessness throughout 2019. We've been doing some work on wildfire and climate resilience, as well as continuing our public engagement training. We have a new resources on opportunity zones, and we'll be continuing our capacity building in disadvantaged communities, both through the Beacon program and a new program that we hope to announce shortly. Now, our role in this technical assistance program, we're really hoping to increase the awareness about this SB2 planning ground availability. We're working with PlaceWorks and the rest of the technical assistance teams to really help connect the cities to those technical assistance providers. And we're helping document best practices and housing success stories. We know that cities throughout the state have been already doing great things to facilitate housing in their communities, and we want to help tell your story. So we're asking that you reach out to us if you have a great story to tell. We'll be documenting them and sharing them through various channels provided by the League and ILG, and in working to expand those in conference sessions, Western City magazines, through social media and whatnot. We're also going to provide a housing-focused community engagement training that's aligned with our tiered public engagement training that we have. We've been doing several public engagement trainings. We have one in Danville coming up next week, and we will be doing the housing one later this year, and we will share the date and location of that as it becomes available. We'll also be updating ILG's housing toolbox. This resource is currently available online. It's called Building Support for Affordable Housing, a toolbox for California officials. It's already great in its current form. It has building and design content. It talks about addressing community concerns, designing public participation processes, and project design implementation. But we're hoping to update it with this current frame now to talk about new public engagement strategies, focus on innovative housing types, and parking and transportation models. Another piece of what we're going to do is share innovative ideas, like the article that we wrote in March issue of Western City magazine that talks about the city of Santa Cruz and their ADU program. They've had a great ADU program for almost a decade now, but they've just updated it. They've updated their ADU ordinance. They've engaged architects to create pre-approved prototypes. The article talks about the pros and cons of that. They hosted a community engagement event to educate the public. They've developed how-to manuals, and they created partnerships to foster financing opportunities. And the reason I wanted to bring that up on this call is because it really showcases if they were to put this type of program and utilize these SB2 funds, it shows how they've stacked several different of the priority policy areas to really maximize what would be the full grant. And I would encourage you all to do that too. This is great money that doesn't come around often, so we want to encourage you to maximize and leave no money on the table, as Carolyn mentioned earlier. Another great innovative idea that a city has implemented thus far is the city of El Cerrito. They did a specific plan which has really, really helped facilitate affordable housing in their community. Their specific plan contains a form-based code that regulates urban development, a complete streets plan, an infrastructure analysis for needed improvements, an environmental analysis that eliminates the need for project-specific review. And like I said, they're utilizing their local transit, their access to BART, and it's really helped foster high-quality, affordable housing in their community. And last but not least, I wanted to highlight something that Chelsea's been working on with the City of Folsom. This is an idea that the city is putting forward as part of this SB2 funding. They're really proposing physical improvements to their customer service center to help streamline permitting. It consists of new technologies, enhanced customer terminals, improved web-based platform for zoning information, a public kiosk for project submittals, and access to data and public records. I mean, they are literally removing walls, literally and figuratively removing walls to help streamline their permitting process. And their nexus to housing, they do have to show it, and these planned improvements and software conversions will result in a more efficient, convenient, and cost-effective customer experience to help streamline and facilitate housing production. So I really just want to encourage you all, this is rare funding. This is flexible funding that does not come around very often at all. While we really want to encourage you to be innovative, we understand that some of you do not have the time to do that, so the other option is to really stay within those 6 priority policy areas that you've heard about on this call. I do want to encourage you to get your applications in early. The window is only 8 months, but the technical assistance that's provided through that is really profound. It's like having a free consultant, so definitely reach out to your regional reps that we talk to. If you have any problems, go on HCD's website. You can contact the Institute, and we'll connect you to the right person. You just can't leave this money on the table. We've been hearing for years how cities need planning money. This is that money. It's flexible. It's for innovative ideas. And we heard a lot of people wanting to use it for their housing elements. And while that is, if you can show the nexus to housing, that is one element, we're saying go beyond that. Do something that's really going to be catalytic for your community and help facilitate the housing that we all know we need. And with that, I will toss it back to Johnny.
All right. Thank you so much. Now I guess we'll open it up to any additional questions and wait for a moment. Seeing no additional questions at the time, I'd like to thank all the speakers who presented in this webinar. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to any of them. And with that, thank you so much, and have a great day.